Hello and welcome to my review of the Halo Infinite campaign. All of the gameplay in this video was captured on an Xbox Series S, but the game's also available on Series X, PC, and Xcloud. It's also, of course, included in your Game Pass subscription. So what does the Halo Infinite campaign have to offer? Well, there's actually not too much to talk about, believe it or not. The game is a very simple and straightforward first-person shooter. You have 15 story missions to fight through and a relatively small open world with a few things within it to discover and complete. Once again, you step into the large green shoes of the Master Chief, a Spartan hero of the UNSC who's put a huge dent in the Covenant's population over the years. At the beginning of the game, we find Chief fighting in a war over the damaged Zeta Halo and trying to defend the UNSC Infinity, which is a huge ship that's been boarded by the Banished forces. Atriox, the leader of the Banished, overwhelms Chief and throws him off the ship and out into space. Around 6 months later, a stranded UNSC pilot accidentally finds Chief drifting through space. He manages to recover him and after bypassing his suit's survival mode, reactivates him. At that point, the pilot, also known by the catchy name of Echo 216, wants to escape the battle and return home. Chief, however, wants to go down to the surface of the Zeta Halo and continue the battle against the Banished. As previously mentioned, there are 15 story missions. Some of these take place in locked-off areas that you can't return to, but most of them happen either inside a Forerunner structure or out in the open world. The story missions take around 10 to 12 hours to complete, depending on if you do any other open world activities in between, and currently, they cannot be replayed without starting a new save file. Once you've completed the story missions, or perhaps in between them, you can take on various side activities in the open world. The world itself is actually more of a semi-open world, with some areas being locked off until later in the game. Even so, there's plenty of things to find in each location. The first port of call in any area is usually a FOB. That's FOB and stands for a Forward Operating Base. When you capture one of these small bases by killing all of the enemies who guard it, it will fall under your control and show you points of interest on the map surrounding that base. You'll have some UNSC troops turn up and gain the ability to restock your weapons and ammo. You'll also get the ability to call in some vehicles should you need one. The things that you can purchase at the FOBs require Valor points, and this is a static number that increases based on your progress in the open world. You don't actually spend Valor points on guns and vehicles, but you need a certain amount in order to access the various items. Think of it as more of a threshold that you need to pass to gain access. Most other activities in the open world do in fact grant Valor. You can destroy propaganda towers, track down Mjolnir lockers, assassinate strong Banished targets, help UNSC Marines, or take over outposts. Propaganda towers aren't shown on your map unless you get close to them, but they are very small and only require a few shots to destroy. They aren't usually guarded, but you might find a few random Banished enemies around them from time to time. The towers, if you can even really call them that, only grant a small amount of Valor, but they are quite numerous. The Mjolnir lockers are marked on your map when you capture a FOB. So once you've captured all of the FOBs in the game, you should have all of these marked on your map. Sometimes they're guarded and sometimes they're not. They always contain a piece of cosmetic content for the multiplayer mode and don't give you any Valor points when opened. During the story, you'll be introduced to Spartan cores. The ones you find in the story missions unlock new abilities and are usually found on dead Spartans. The abilities include things like a front-facing shield that you can shoot through but enemies can't, and the ever-reliable hookshot. However, the cores you find in the open world are in chests, which will be marked on your map after capturing a FOB. These cores are used to upgrade the abilities themselves and do not grant Valor points when collected. Another thing you'll find on your map after capturing a FOB is groups of Marines who are under attack. You just need to get to their location and help them fight off the Banished forces to be rewarded with Valor points. Marked on your map in purple, you'll also find outposts. These are usually large-scale areas that you need to take down piece by piece. You'll be destroying silos, disabling equipment, and taking down every enemy you find. Once complete, you'll take control of the outpost and gain a decent amount of Valor points for your trouble. Also scattered around the open world, you'll find high-priority targets. These are essentially world bosses that you need to track down and assassinate. These enemies can be quite tough and have their own shield and health bar, a lot like the bosses that you encounter in the main story missions. Once defeated, you'll unlock special versions of the various weapons that they own to add to your collection as well as Valor points. In terms of other collectibles and things to find, you have the tried and tested audio logs that give you some background information and of course, the series staple, skulls. These 12 hidden skulls as always give you various modifiers for the campaign. Some of these are in fact missable and currently there is no way to go back and get them without starting a new save file, so do keep that in mind. And that's about all there is to tell you about the game itself, so now let's move into the personal opinions, starting with the stuff I liked. So first off, I think it's really important to say that I've played every single mainline Halo game. I was there 20 years ago in 2001 when it all started. I was, I think, about 13 years old at the time, and I got the console with Halo, Splinter Cell, Jet Set Radio, and Sega GT for Christmas. The console actually came out in November, but I was allowed to have it on release day because it was kind of a big deal, especially to me. Halo was definitely not the first well-loved first-person shooter in the world, but I never had a PC back in the day. I've always been a console gamer, and frankly, that's the way I prefer it. But yeah, Halo 1 to me, back then, was absolutely mind-blowing. Just the way it looked, the way it played, the story it told. I don't know what exactly did it for me, but I was just a huge fan of this series. I played Halo 1, 2, 3, ODST, and Reach multiple times through, and I loved them all. Halo 2 was my first online gaming experience, and Halo Reach is my favourite Halo game of all of them. The problems occurred for me when Halo 4 released, and something just fell off. It looked like Halo, but it just didn't feel like Halo. It seemed to have kind of lost its soul, so to speak. Then came Halo 5, and frankly I barely made it through that one. I pushed through it, got to the end, uninstalled it and sold it a few days after buying it. I have had zero faith in 343 Industries after the release of Halo 4, and you might be thinking, why am I telling you all this? Well, I think it's important to know where I'm coming from in regards to my background and my opinions. So to be completely upfront with you, I don't love this game. I do, however, like it quite a lot. My lack of faith in 343 has actually been challenged, and I'm very happy about that. I very much expected this game to be an absolute dumpster fire upon release. I mean, the multiplayer that released in November was really fun to play, but was stuffed to the gills with greedy monetization and unrewarding progression. I expected the campaign to be dull, lifeless, and just held together with duct tape and string. But I'm more than happy to report that while short, it's absolutely worth playing in my view. The hookshot ability is an absolute revelation, and I thought it was the most addictive thing to use. It gives you such great mobility and allows you to literally outplay the enemy's AI. You can use it to get away from danger, grab fusion coils from a distance that you can then lob at enemies, get to higher ground, or grapple towards an enemy for a melee attack. It's just so fun to use, and that's to say nothing of the rest of the combat. The game's combat is absolutely the saving grace of this game for me personally. While playing through it, I couldn't help but think to myself, if Infinite's combat wasn't as good as it is, this whole thing would be just painfully average. Now that may sound a little bit harsh, and I do honestly understand that, but I really think that the game lives and dies on its combat. It looks decent enough, and remember I'm playing this on a Series S, not a Series X, so it will look better on the stronger console and of course on PCs. It runs at I think 1080p 60 FPS on the Series S, and for me it looks fine. On top of being relatively decent visually, I think the guns, vehicles and abilities all feel pretty good to use, but honestly other than that I'm struggling to come up with anything else good to say. So let me just be absolutely 100% crystal clear. I do like the game and I was happy to play through it. I wasn't bored or annoyed with the game at all, but that all comes from the combat and the combat alone. And with that said, let me tell you about a few things I didn't like. As a long-time fan of Halo, I think I might have to be a little bit firmer on this game than I usually am with others. Of course, if you played this campaign and you absolutely love it and think it's the best Halo ever, then great. I mean, genuinely, I'm really happy that you enjoyed it. Do I agree with you? No, I don't, but please, don't look too much into that. It really doesn't matter, and you are allowed to like stuff. That said, I like the campaign. I really do, but as I've said, the combat holds it together for me. If it wasn't for the quality of the combat, this game would be completely forgettable, at least as far as I'm concerned. I think the graphics are okay, and there's some really nice vistas in certain places, but overall it's just alright. The open world doesn't really add much to the game either, in my opinion. I mean, again, it's fine, I guess, and I don't find it offensively bad or anything like that, but it's just kind of there. Halo has some open world areas in other games for you to tackle at your leisure, but not anything on this kind of scale, and I just think it's a bit unnecessary. It's not bad, it's just not needed. I think I would have preferred the developers to take the resources and effort that went into the open world design and instead put that into creating incredible set-piece levels. Does anyone out there remember the Scarab section in Halo 2 where you had to follow it and board it to take it out? There's really nothing like that here, and really, I'm kind of struggling to remember what even happened during the campaign. I remember it was very enjoyable to fight the enemies, but literally everything else is just nebulous. Halo Infinite was meant to release a year ago, and I'm just trying to imagine what it would have been like if it had of. Perhaps they used that year to polish the combat, which is why that feels like the only thing that's worth a damn. As a product, as a game, I just feel like it's missing so much stuff. It's been about 6 years since the last Halo game, and I think Infinite's been in full development for what, 5 of those 6 years, something like that? I mean, what did they do in those years? Well, they decided to remove the multiplayer portion and implement an unfair and frankly awful monetization system. I just don't know what these people were thinking. I mean, it's difficult to say this kind of stuff because I don't like being hard on developers, but did they look at all the backlash that other companies got for doing this kind of crap and thought, hey, we need some of that? I just don't get it. I just don't understand the choices that these people made. Just make the game properly, make it fair, and people will be happy. It's as simple as that. Why is it so hard to understand? Halo Reach had armor customization and it was all built into the game and it was great. They also decided to make the game open world for some reason and then really do nothing with it. In my opinion, they've taken the carefully crafted set piece levels of the older games and watered them down with some open world nothingness. And don't get me wrong, I like open world games in general, but this feels like a big mismatch for this series. Another point of contention is missing modes, co-op, Forge, Firefight, and not being able to select the match types you want in multiplayer. Why is all this stuff just not here as standard on day one? As I'm reading this, I do understand that I sound like I kind of hate this game, and I really don't. I just don't understand their choices, and it kind of hurts a bit as I really care about the series. Maybe I'm too sentimental, and maybe I should just let it all go. I mean, these games aren't made for me and me alone, and I get that, so yeah. I think lastly, I'll just mention the story. I was personally happy where Halo 3 ended, and then you got ODST, which was a great change of pace, and then Reach was just so good. Just being on that planet that you knew was doomed to fall, fighting in the streets, fighting a losing battle, having your squad mates die one by one. I may actually have to go back and play some more Halo Reach again. It's been too long, I really should do that. But I felt like the story just fell off a cliff in Halo 4 and then climbed back up that cliff just to jump back off it again in Halo 5. The story in this game is utterly forgettable. The big bad guy is nothing more than a snarling, growling nobody, and the new companions, the pilot and not Cortana, are just kind of annoying, honestly. I don't hate them, but I don't really care about them either. I'm just indifferent, I suppose. The game also talks a lot about Atriox, who is the big bad guy from the Halo Wars games, apparently. I didn't actually know that until I did the research, and I actually thought that Atriox and, Escharum were the same brute. I just didn't realize they were different until like halfway through the game. But put simply, I just don't like the story arc from 4 to now. It's kind of just jumped the shark, revealed too much, and now it's all just weird and generic feeling to me. I actually wanted to skip a lot of the cutscenes because it was just so hard to care after the first hour, but I didn't. I watched them all and I did try to understand the story, but it's just so hard to actually latch on to any of the story points. My missus actually walked into the room during the credits, and she asked me what I thought of the story, and I said back to her, well, it definitely happened, I can tell you that much. But anyway, I think I should move on to the conclusion. I'm sure you get the idea by now. In my opinion, Halo Infinite's campaign is uninspired and soulless, but at the same time, it's genuinely quite fun to play. It's an odd situation to be in because I would easily recommend the game based on its combat alone, and the same would be true for the multiplayer section. However, the story, the world, and literally everything else is just a giant miss in my opinion. I don't hate it, and I truly mean that. There are some fleeting moments where it feels like Halo again, when you're fighting the Covenant and the classic music starts to kick in, but unfortunately it's very quickly drowned out by having to travel to the next main mission in a mostly empty open world, or watch a cutscene where people you don't care about won't shut up. Ultimately, if you have Game Pass, I can't really think of a reason not to play this. If you're paying for the subscription, then it's definitely worth your time. Having said that, I would not pay anywhere near the £50 or $60 asking price to own the game digitally or physically. It's simply not worth it in my opinion. Plus, for you collectors out there, there's no playable build of the campaign on the actual disc, so it's not even worth buying for your collection. And seeing places like IGN and other outlets give this a 9 out of 10 was very shocking to me. I don't do scores, as you know, but if they had have said 5 out of 10, or maybe 6 out of 10, I could have perhaps seen the logic, but a 9? I just don't see it, and that's a shame because I really want to like it. At the end of the day, this is 343's third attempt at making a Halo game, and being honest, I just don't think that their goals and their vision for this series lines up with what Halo once was. And so there you go, that's my review of Halo Infinite's campaign. It's available right now on both Xbox Series consoles, PC, and Xcloud. Plus you can get it for free as part of your Game Pass subscription. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.